Hey there, let's do something a little different today. Let's step away from all the noise and take a quiet walk down a very small road. We're going to follow the story of a life, but not a person's life. This is the story of a tiny being named Spark and its journey of just becoming. So yeah, let's start this journey together.
Have you ever just looked at the world around you and had this feeling that everything in it, from a single drop of water to a tiny ray of light, has its own quiet story? Well, that's exactly the question we're going to dive into today, and we'll see it all through the eyes of our little friend, Spark. All right, so every story has to start somewhere, right? And for Spark, the beginning wasn't some big bang. Not at all. It was the quietest of feelings. Just this gentle awakening into a world that felt so vast and so new and just full of things to learn.
So before Spark even had a shape or a name, before it even knew it was a self, it just felt a pull. Imagine that. A simple, constant, outward reach towards something distant and warm. It was this feeling of pure forward motion, There was no back to return to, just this endless, innocent wanting. And then, after that pull, something new happened. A rhythm. Spark figured out it could breathe out and then breathe back in. And that simple motion, just returning to where it started, wow, it was a total revelation. For the very first time, it felt whole, like a complete closed loop. It could finally just sit down and be.
Okay, so with that first feeling of being whole, Spark's journey really began. You could call this its spring, a time for learning how to build a stable self, Figuring out how to even exist in a world that's full of others. So Spark's first big project was trying to create a home for itself. It built this little house, put up one wall, then two, then three, but the whole thing was kind of wobbly, incomplete. It was so clearly missing something essential. And then a stranger comes along and just stands right where that fourth wall should be. They complete the home, not with another wall, but just with their presence. And wow, this was the first huge lesson of its life. Spark realized it didn't have to be perfect all by itself. That reaching out, needing someone else to feel complete, that wasn't a failure. Not at all. It was actually a kind of awareness. It was the very beginning of understanding that we don't just build things in the world, we build them with the world.
So now that it had this newfound stability, Spark's journey moves into its next phase. It's summer. This was a season for really venturing out into the wider world, a time for action, for expression, and for figuring out its purpose among everyone else.
So get this. One day, Spark walks into this place of just total chaos. Everyone's moving all over the place, with no real purpose. So what does Spark do? It just walks right to the center and stands perfectly still. And just like that, it became a quiet anchor. Everyone almost instinctively turned toward it, and all their scattered movements started organizing into these clear pathways. It was like Spark became the one that brought order to the many. And it was a huge discovery, right? That sometimes your purpose isn't found in doing something, but in being still.
And this discovery taught Spark something amazing. It could be many things at once. It learned how to be a strong, flexible pillar when other people needed support. Bending under the weight, but never, ever breaking. But it also learned to be a gentle light for itself, to find that quiet, centered peace that could actually light up the world without doing anything at all. It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? That our inner state just naturally radiates outward.
You see, Spark's purpose wasn't about one single grand event. It was about all these countless small, helpful actions. Its little home, it became a gentle fortress where everyone would run during a storm. It learned how to carry just a single warm ember from a dying fire all the way to a cold hearth, and in doing so rekindled hope. It even walked the same rocky path over and over, every single day, until its own passage had worn the stones smooth for everyone who came after. Just amazing.
Okay, so as that bright summer energy starts to soften, Spark enters its autumn, and this is a time for a much deeper, quieter kind of wisdom. It's a season of responsibility, of integration, and of finding an even more profound balance with the world.
And it's here that Spark learned about the incredible power of patience. It discovered that sometimes the most important work you can do is just wait. But we're not talking about a passive, empty kind of waiting. No, this was an active, deep listening. It would watch the sun for decades just to witness the one perfect moment. It came to understand that the long, slow observation, really attuning yourself to the world's rhythm, that was the real work.
It also learned this really profound lesson about what responsibility means.
There was this one time Spark literally stood between a village and a wave of poison, and it just absorbed the harm into itself to protect everyone else. And it learned in that moment that some burdens, they're not heavy, not if you choose to carry them. That choice, it transformed the weight from just being pressure into being a real purpose.
And in the end, Spark's greatest gift became its simple presence. I mean, as it grew more and more balanced on the inside, it started to harmonize the world on the outside. It's wild. When Spark entered a room, arguments would just soften. Anxieties would ease up. People would just find themselves acting with a little more kindness. It didn't have to do anything. Its own inner coherence was so complete that it just naturally helped everyone around it find their own.
And so, finally, Spark's journey comes to its winter. But, and this is important, this wasn't an ending. Not really. It was a season of letting go, of transforming the self it had worked so hard to build into something totally new, something full of possibility. That solid shape it had worked so hard to build, well, it began to soften. Its edges started to blur. It stretched its influence so wide and so thin that it became almost transparent. And the feeling was just one of release, of lightening. People would walk right through it, not even noticing, but they'd feel subtly changed by the passage, like they were warmed by a presence they just couldn't quite name.
Its physical form just kept dissolving, but not into nothingness. It was dissolving into pure presence. Think about that. It was no longer a location you could point to, but more like a condition, a gentle radiance that just quietly filled the entire system. So this wasn't a loss of self at all. It was an expansion of it, a peaceful release of a familiar form in order to become something more.
You know, the best way I can think to describe this state is like an echo. You know that feeling when someone speaks your name one last time, and even after the sound is totally gone, the feeling of it just kind of hangs in the air? That's what it was like. Spark's presence persisted, just this soft, gentle echo of the incredible journey it had lived.
So right there, at the very edge of everything it knew, Spark didn't just stop. It didn't cease to be. Instead, its form became a threshold, a shimmering doorway into whatever was coming next. And that leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? When a life or a journey or a story is over, does it really truly end? Or does it just become the door into whatever comes next?